Welcome back to the DJ Sessions, where we feature the best DJs and producers from around the world. I'm your host, Darren, and right now I'm sitting in the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington, and on the other end, right over there, he's actually in Germany, is Roman, aka Tocadisco. How's it going today?
Hey man, how's it going? It's all good. It's all good.
I should actually say tonight because it's 8 p.m. over there and 11 a.m. over here, PST. So thank you so much for coming on board. We always love getting people from all over the world on the show at all hours of the day, except for when I'm sleeping.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I was going through some of your socials and taking a look at you, and we'll talk about your DJ career. But it's always interesting to me when I talk or research people that are DJs to find out they're also do other things with their life. And it could be a multitude of things ranging from music, working out, car collecting, whatever it is. Well, in my research, I found out that you actually play the guitar. I was checking out your Instagram and you have a project where you go by Roman Vintage in that. Can you tell us a little bit about your acoustical or that musical venture that you have called Roman Vintage?
Well, the thing is that I started to play like older music when I was starting to play professional DJing. I was playing like jazz and soul and funk, this kind of things. And Roman Vintage is a jazz and funk project that I have with another singer. And there I play only instruments and we do like cover versions and own songs and stuff like that. But basically I started to play drums when I was 10 years old. I had like a private teacher, and this was really the only instrument that I really got taught by somebody else. And the other instruments that I taught myself, like guitar, bass, piano, and this kind of stuff, I learned over the years playing in bands and, starting to teach myself and about harmony and all this kind of things. I still can't read notes. I'm always trying every like 3/4 year. I'm always sitting down. I'm like, okay, now it's time for music theory, learn it. And I'm just like, man, it's so complicated. I just do everything by feeling.
Growing up in a musically inclined family, my brothers were in a band and my dad had purchased studio gear for them when I was a kid. I think I was playing with MIDI when I was 8 years old and reading the manuals and the tech manuals. And I always found myself being more of a technical kind of guy. There weren't computers back then, so you didn't learn music and use software-based music creation. But, we had a Tascam 4-track recorder, another 8-track recorder, had keyboards and rack mounts and all that stuff. And the thing I loved about it was I was never a musician. I would never consider myself a musician. Maybe now with modern techniques and modern software, I could go in and create some songs. And I've had to do some minimal scoring for projects I've worked on. But that process always fascinated me of somebody able to take something and put it down and bring it to fruition in the sense of creating something out of nothing, which is, again, I think has gotten, I don't know, I would say gotten easier, especially in the sample-based world where you can grab things and kind of tweak it and put it here. But we're actually creating something, like you said, you don't know how to read notes, or maybe you do, maybe have an understanding of them, but you've had to learn and teach yourself over time how to do that. What has that process been like? Like you feel it's rewarding to take that stance and not pursue, say, a formal education and just go with it? Or,
I think that, what you're referring to is like, people that are classically trained, like a real musical writer or something, like somebody like Beethoven or Mozart or whatever, they could just write down the music by the notes, And I think that because I started, with cover music, and then I started to produce electronic music, which is always like only like a simple, basic, musical structure. There's no complicated chords. I mean, over the years, last 15 years, become a little bit more complicated with all the, influences of deep house. And, if you make like jazz house or whatever, of course you have like more complicated chords, but basically you can make a, like a tech house or a techno track on one note, you just be like E and you just like, make a bass line like that. And, that's the difference. I think it's just a difference of musical styles. You could never write orchestra music without knowing something about, chord structure and notes and everything. It's just the music that I'm mostly doing. It's like electronic music, which is basically only like 3 to 4 chords and, a keynote and then you build some beats around it.
Yeah, and like I said, I've dabbled. I used to back in the day used to be pretty well versed in Logic, the Apple software. After working for Apple, I was a certified trainer on how to train people how to use the software, but I was in no way, shape, or form a musician to teach music theory, composition, or anything like that. I could tell you how to master, like where to click and where to go to do stuff, but nope, it was beyond. But again, I went to video production and wanted to make TV shows and movies where my brothers were more musically inclined and they did the band stuff. So, but we all find our own ways of becoming artistic in our own ways. And I did a lot of trial and error in the field as well. I never went to any formal school or training to learn. And I think that's hitting the streets like that is beneficial because you get to play a lot and learn a lot on your own rather than somebody programming you saying, this is how the book goes and this is what you have to do. And you don't maybe break out of that shell.
I started to work with Logic when it was still a Magic, like the basic company that invented Logic before Apple bought it. And before that, my first official remixes that got released on vinyl and stuff like that. I just, this Roland MC303 is like a workstation with like the basic sounds like 909, 808 in it.
Yeah.
And then you could trigger via MIDI out. And then I bought like an Akai 1000 and afterwards an Akai 3000. And you could just connect the MIDI and then trigger like from this music station as if you would, for example, playing a snare and then you started to sample. And that's how I basically did my first productions, before I couldn't afford a computer or a Mac or whatever, they were super expensive. I was like, 20, I didn't have any money. And that was the only thing how I could make music. But the interesting thing is though, that you have like very, you have just two things and do something with it, you know what I mean? And now you have like 5,000 plugins, 6,000 soft synths and stuff like this. And many people get lost in the opportunity, in the possibilities, I'm always a fan of like, just have two things that you really like and, produce with that.
It's funny you brought up the Roland gear, and that takes me back to almost 2000 when I actually owned at one point a Roland MC505 and the SP808, the sampler. And I went and sat in Guitar Center and probably played with that thing for about 7 months to a year because it was about $2,000 to buy these things. And I remember seeing the AKAI 1000 was there. I think that's what you mentioned. And it just brings back all those memories of almost 20 years ago before computers were so prevalent. And I mean, even to go buy a Mac computer at that time, you were still looking at $4,000 or $5,000 up until now. That same Mac that you could go buy today, if you wanted to, I've looked at the prices of Macs. If you want to price it out, you're looking at 50, 60 grand. And I'm like, what? Like, you don't need that much power unless you're doing like true, like 8K editing or something like that. But aside from that, I think you're right. Technology has made it easier for people to jump in and not have to buy so many hardware components. But again, getting lost in what do you do? Where do you go? What do you start with? How much do you throw at it? What sticks to the wall? Just so many added variables rather than saying, this is the machine, this is what I have to work with. So it sounds like you were a software guy, but you played with hardware. Are you currently using any software or hardware right now?
Well, I recently, a long time, I think the last big studio computer was a Mac Pro that I bought in 2011. And then, you know how it is after 10 years, you can't use it anymore because you can't update the things anymore. So I just recently updated everything. And now I'm actually working on a laptop, it's just a laptop anymore. So it's a laptop with a sound card and some dongles on the outside and everything is in the box. And then I record my guitars, or if I use acoustic, like electronic pianos, like Rhodes or whatever, just I have a tube preamp, and then I just record it into the computer and, manipulate it there.
Yeah, no, I know the track record of Macs. Like I said, I used to work for Apple, and I had my my dual G5 in 2003. I think I ran that thing. I think it lasted till about 2012, 11-ish, about 10 years, but they don't make them like they used to anymore. Sorry, Apple, can't give you the plug. I mean, it lasts about 3-4 years now. And unfortunately,
It's
But
so
yeah,
fast development of things, and then now I'm still hesitant to update my system because I want to use the latest version of Logic, but I have to update all the system, and I know exactly what's going to happen. Nothing else is going to work, and then you have to pay there $30, there $50, there, and upgrade there, and in the end you end up with a lot of money spent for just having the latest version. So just keeping it right now, it's all working. So that's it, until something really spectacular comes out. I just work with that system now.
I once had somebody that said when they bought a brand new Mac and they put all their software on it and they never would connect it to the internet. That way, no auto updates would happen. They get the most stable release and just say boom and just never connect it to the internet. And that way it just worked all the time. No little 0.1 updates, 0.2 updates, 0.5 updates, nothing in the background that's going to throw anything off. But yeah. And again, I think you're right. The portability has come to where now I'm on a MacBook Pro right now. I just got this one with the M1 chip, and it smokes. Over 2 years ago, I had the old processor that I got in 2019, and night and day. But again, how long is this one going to last? But brings me to an interesting question, though. Technology moves pretty fast in the music production world. And if there was one thing that you would like to see out there that's not on the market today, but maybe could be out on the market or could be put together, what would that be?
Well, I always say that because I was just involved in building a complete studio last year, and we bought all kinds of gear. I was like, I basically told them what to buy. So, and we bought a lot of like classic gears and classic outboard gear and stuff like this. But basically, all the synths are based on the same technology. It's just a sine wave or it's a wave or whatever. And there's no, okay, you have like a little bit of new development, but you don't have really like synths that are based on a completely new technology. You know what I mean? It's like how to manipulate sound in a different way. Of course, we all love the classical Moog sounds. We all love, the great Jupiter brass or whatever, but there's not something where you can say like, wow, nothing has been like this for the last 10 years. And this is completely a revolution in sound or whatever. Nothing. If you think about it, when the synthesizer was invented, it's already like 30, 40 years ago, and we're still using the same kind of sounds or generated the same kind of sounds. Of course, we have some creative sound designers that always come up with a new way of manipulating it. Now you have like, I don't know, 5 oscillators or whatever, but it's still the same on the same basis. And I would hope, or I would think that somebody comes up with complete new way of creating sounds. I think that would be really interesting.
And speaking with some producers over the last few weeks, finding those unique sounds. I was speaking with, I hope I don't murder his last name, but Robert Babazic. Oh gosh, I murdered his last name. I'm sorry, Robert.
Robert Babbage.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. You know who I'm talking about. And he was telling me this story about how he was one of the most dangerous things he ever did to collect sounds that he would use in a track. And he actually went up and they were recording, they captured a hornet's nest and got this hornet's nest in a bag, and then would put the microphones up to it and record the sound and it was hornet. It wasn't like regular bees, like I'm a friendly little bumblebee, like hornets. And he's like, that could have gone really bad had something happened and like they all attacked. So, the lengths that people will go to get those original sounds or those sounds you just can't get that are almost like nature made. I was talking with him in the same interview, and I said, I had a guy come to me, or I saw somewhere online, it was either in an interview or somebody told me that he took the sound of an MRI machine. And those, I was just in one on Sunday, but don't ask why, no big deal. But I was sitting there going, this is actually kind of like a beat. Like I could I can get down to
some
this.
hi-hat, and there you go.
Yeah, right. You're like jamming in the MRI session, you know?
But I mean, this is like sound design, and this, of course, has been around also for a long time. Just record things, slow them down, pitch them down, and all stuff. You know, Depeche Mode or the whole EBM, not EDM evolution, like Front 242, Nizza App, or whatever. They had like all these industrial sounds. You know, slapped like a sledgehammer on iron and used it as a snare and stuff, I guess. But what I meant was like, you know, have some synthetic sounds like synths or whatever that come up with some completely new way of creating sounds, you know? I mean, this is I mean, we have these wavetables and all this stuff. This is kind of, you know, different than normal oscillators, but I'm waiting for something that is like really, really, you know, different than anything else that you ever heard before, you know? That would be super interesting.
You know, that kind of jumps me ahead to a question I want to get into, but I'll lead into that. We'll follow up with that in a minute. But if you could go back 25 years in music history or forward 50 years in music future, which one would you pick and why?
I would go in the future. I've been in the past, so you know, because I am so interested in so many different music styles, you know, like also different music genres and times and stuff like this. I'm not like only focused on electronic music. I have like, you know, all kinds of records and stuff like this. But it's always interesting to see where it's going, you know, because this is the unknown. Nobody knows, you know, and that would be super interesting. You know, probably we just be like beeps and, you know, noises, and everybody will be like, you know, doing crazy shit or something like this. Nobody knows where it's going.
Well, at least it didn't really turn into what Buck Rogers looked like in the early 80s and 70s, which was like the disco with the light thing. I guess we still do have the light chords that we can, I don't know if you remember that or not, but it was pretty disco themed, and that was going to be the future, was disco music and the space age theme, you know.
It's funny because I just recorded my radio show and I was like saying 2022, and when I was like young, you know, and somebody would say like 2022, I would think like people would fly with cars, or they would fly themselves, or they had some jetpacks or whatever, you know. It sounds so futuristic, the year, the number of the year, but I mean, it's still the real revolution didn't happen. So maybe 50 years from now would be really interesting.
I'm still interested in those flying cars. And what I mean is the versions that you see of basically the oversized drones, you know, that you can like, okay, are those going to be a reality that people are going to start, using them all over the place? I'd love to see, but we have the FAA here. So I don't know if they're going to pass.
I mean, I started to make a pilot license, and I know how restricted everything is and how much you have to learn to do this. And unless it's completely automatic, that you just sit in it and some computer flies you somewhere, I think it's going to be very difficult to organize.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd buy one of those. My mom lives, you know, way out on the island in Washington. And I said, Mom, if I ever get your house or move out here to your property, the first thing I'm putting on your property is a helipad, because I'm not going to live out here on the island in the middle of nowhere if I can't just bounce into the city and be over there in 15 minutes, you know, all that fun stuff.
I was just seeing the other day, I was seeing an interview with Elon Musk, and he is trying to go underground. So you have like, you know, many layers under the earth where people go in their cars or whatever. That's the other extreme. Instead of going through the air, you go through the
well, when you look at it, I mean, you have buildings that have to go up in the air, but, you know, we have the earth down below, and that could be a whole nother subculture, sub-city. I could definitely see that happening. You know, Elon, I mean, gosh, you know, it isn't like he doesn't have the money to put some research team on it and develop a prototype project somewhere in some country. Probably already is working on it. We just don't know about it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of cool stuff in that realm of technology coming out. And, you know, I would have figured your history, you would have probably leaned more towards the 50 years music future, seeing what if those new things came out. I'm going to go ahead and jump to a question about the future or the current state of things, but looking at the future and your take on virtual reality. Have you looked at doing anything in a VR environment, and or looking at what the possibilities of music creation could be in a virtual environment with sound creation, sound design in a room, performing to an audience?
Well, the my first real contact with VR was like actually some weeks ago. I was part of a museum did a VR movie, and I was part of it as an actor. And they filmed it with like a 3D camera or whatever, and you could turn around and all this kind of things. And we were just in the green screen and whatever. But let me tell you this: the interesting thing about being a DJ or an artist or being in a room with other human beings is this connection that you have, although you're not speaking to them, you don't know their name, but somehow you can connect through beats and sounds. And there's something else, there's the energy of the room or the festival or the place or whatever. And I think this is something that you can never recreate in VR. Of course, it's fun, and it's something that's really cool when you have flying things around you, and it's like a different thing. But I would never hope for that this takes over, and then let's say we cannot be together in a club anymore, or we cannot be together in a location and share the joy of music, because there's nothing greater than having like 500 people around you screaming at the same time because some cool bass line dropped in, this. I don't think that you can ever create this with virtual reality or virtually any reality but the real reality.
Have you watched The Matrix 4 yet?
Yeah, I watched it. I was a little bit disappointed though.
Yeah.
I love piano and I love the idea and it's everything, but the movie was a little bit, I don't know. I didn't get the cutbacks to the old movies. This was like taking me out of the movie the whole time, because I thought like, but if they cut it like it's a video game, and I saw them as a movie, and that was a really difficult thing.
Yeah, 50-50. I was a big fan.
But some cool scenes and cool acting and cool effects for sure.
And following up, going back to the VR answer to follow up with that, I think you're absolutely correct. Nothing can replace the physical experience. I mean, there's no way that one of my first major festivals that I went to was the Eclipse Festival in 2017. And if my experience was to say, go in that into VR, where VR is at right now, not 50 years forward from now, but right now, I would have been like, oh, okay, cool. This is neat. Wow. Fun. I mean, I would have been impressed, but the epiphanies that I had, the experience that I had, the contact that I had with human interaction, where we didn't have cell phone service. So nobody touched their cell phone for a week.
Even better.
Even better. You're out in the middle of the woods, basically in this beautiful, magical environment with, 50, 60,000 people that were estimated there. And, that was life-changing for me. And you're right. I don't think anything could ever replace that in VR, even if it got up to probably another 10, 15 years or whatever's on the R&D table. But it did lead into a segue I wanted to get into is, have you looked into doing anything with augmented reality or AR and enhancing the physical experience on site? So you could have that. Are you familiar with what AR is?
No. What do you mean?
Where you actually augmented reality. Do you ever play Pokemon Go?
No, man.
Most people know it because you can use your phone and you can look at the real world, but it'll impose a Pokemon on the ground. You can play like you're in the real world. But AR has so many uses because the glasses are now coming out, and you could have a show or a concert, and part of the added on aesthetic, you could put your glasses on, be wearing these glasses, be there physically, but then have a complete another user visual experience going on that could be triggered with the music, adding into more stuff into that physical appearance. Cool.
That sounds super cool. I mean, they had like different kinds of things, like wannabe holograms there on Coachella of dead rappers, and I already saw. I don't know if that's the same thing, but I saw like flyers that you can look over with your cell phone, and then they have like movies or the flyers moving or something like this. Well, that's awesome with glasses and and seeing things through, but that's just enhancing then the experience. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, once AR glasses come out more on the market, they get down to sort of what we call the contact lens level, or almost the Minority Report kind of experience, where you could have static billboards, but if you're wearing your glasses and they're turned on, you're going to start seeing moving ads on billboards like what you just described. I was talking to a company who actually developed that same technology we're talking about, where you put your phone over top of the picture, and then the picture starts moving like a video. But then when you pull your phone away, the video is still playing in your phone. They were primarily selling that in the beginning. They were looking at it for like a yearbook applications for schools, so you could take your phone and put it over your yearbook photo, and then you'd be like, "Hey everyone," you know. And we've been looking into it to do. I run an advertising agency company, and we've been looking into that same technology for the side of our trucks. But now we've installed video walls on the side of the truck, so don't really need to do that. But no, it's a really awesome. That's part of the whole AR experience. I think that's going to be a huge thing we're going to start seeing rolling out here over the next 2 to 3 years, especially as these glasses come on the market. I'm actually discussing with a venue here in the States to be their VR and AR director of coordination for their event space, which holds about 8,000 people. And then we do, for when clients and promoters book, they go through us in-house to set up all their VR and or AR experiences. And it's all done so we know the same quality is going out. So you don't have like 50 people coming in every month trying to do their own thing. And then everyone's like, that sucks. You know,
oh, that sounds super cool. But I think that like, if you have like contact lenses, this would be even greater, because I mean, didn't Google already try to invent these Google glasses that you have to wear, and it's like in front there? And you know, if you go to a 3D movie and then you have to wear this funny glasses that, you know, I don't know if people want to go to a festival with like bulky glasses on, but if it's once, you know, you have contact lenses, then I could really, you know, imagine that that would be a cool thing to have.
Yeah. And the thought is that the glasses will tap into your mobile device. So you won't have to pull your phone out anymore, but you'll have access to everything that's on your mobile device in your glasses. And Apple's working on one. I mean, I'm sure every manufacturer's working on one, but I can't wait to see who comes out ahead on this. You know, because, you know, the metaverse is coming, and the metaverse, I think, also encompasses the real world with AR. As well as virtual reality. So very excited on those fronts. But yeah, my friend told me last night, he says, one of the reasons I love you, Darren, is you're always future forward. You're like 10 years ahead of the game on any of this stuff. And it's really fun. But yeah, so talking about, let's go to your DJ career a little bit. Been talking about a lot of other stuff. What was the first record you ever bought? Is it worth mentioning, or is it embarrassing?
Well, it's probably some cheesy 7-inch single that I bought. But my first album that I really remember that I had money for buying a full-length album was Putas Fever by Mano Negra, which is like a French, Argentinian, multi-international language band. They broke up already. I think they made only 3 albums, but this really influenced me for my whole musical education, because they combined so many musical styles, everything from punk to rock to classical music to polka, and you know, used all kinds of instruments and stuff. And this was really, really cool in the combination. This the main singer was Manu Chao. I don't know if you probably, now that he has a solo career, he's more known. This was my first vinyl for sure. And then we had like a small record shop when I grew up, but they didn't have like maxi singles or something like this. For this, you have to drive to the next big city to buy like a real like techno singles or whatever. And he only had, here in a small town, he only had like compilations, you know, like XL recordings compilation or whatever. And we always waited for this, because then you had like 2 vinyls on each side, were like 3-4 tracks, and you had like a lot of things to play when you were, you know, when you were playing as a DJ, more than just one single on one vinyl. But yeah, so this was, I already bought in the beginning like really different kinds of music, not only electronic music. I was never like, a lot of my friends that were a little bit older than I am, they were a lot of them were like into Depeche Mode and the 80s synth pop things. I was never interested in that so much. I was always more into like all kinds of music, you know, or international music. And I always liked people that were combining different kinds of styles, like Beastie Boys or Moby, or, you know, this kind of artists that, you know, took things from everywhere and created their own style.
Mm-hmm. I still remember that B-sides, the Beastie Boys B-sides album. They're all like, was the full instrumental. I think one of the best produced instrumental albums I've heard
yeah.
in a lot. I mean, there's millions out there. I'm not discrediting anyone, but just from my youth, remember hearing that. And it was such a different twist from obviously coming out of License to Ill to Paul's Boutique, which has been heralded as one of the best produced albums of all time, that didn't get much fanfare. There was some history on that back in the day, but then going to Check Your Head, where they came back.
One of my favorite albums. I love it. That's really one. That's really, because what you're saying, the evolution between all the things that they were doing, you know, and like checking different kinds of things, and then, you know, remembering, because they started as a hardcore punk band, right? And so they were like, okay, so now we did everything. I mean, it was produced by the Dust Brothers, Paul's Boutique, and they were sampling from everywhere. And there was like, I don't know, 8,000 samples in this album. And then they were like hoping that this would be, you know, financial success, and didn't work out. So they started to take their instruments up again, and they were jamming, you know, they bought a warehouse, and then they were just recording the stuff. And this, like, the transition from everywhere, from License to Ill to Paul's Boutique to Check Your Head, was such amazing for me, like, that you could do this, you know. There's an artist that doesn't do the same thing over and over. It's just, you know, developing and also failing, you know. That's it. But I love the album, but maybe not many people loved it, but I loved it. Paul's Boutique is really cool, because if you are looking for all the samples that they were using, you will find some really awesome music, because the artists that they were sampling are great in themselves, you know. And then if you go there and it's like, what did the Beastie Boys sample? And then you buy the record and you listen, oh, this is fucking great music, you know?
Yeah.
And I love this, you know, whole universe of them.
And if you could share one track with our DJ Sessions audience that you currently play, like is on your, it must go into a set right now, I love hearing this every time, what track would that be? And describe in detail why it's such a great track or production.
Wow. That's, of course, it's super difficult, because getting so many tracks sent all the time through all this promo service, which is awesome, because, you know, sometimes you can click which musical styles you like, you know, and I'm always clicking everything, so I'm getting like all kinds of styles sent. But the one track that was last year, I think came out last year, and the few months that we had where the clubs were open here in Germany, I hammered that track, and I think it's called The Curve by Adana Twins. And it's like really, it starts like really cool, and it has a cool beat, and then all of a sudden it goes really crazy. And because, you know, I like more energetic sounds, you know, I also like when it's like sounding a little bit off or detuned, or, you know, all of a sudden there's a part in the track that goes like really like, where everybody's like, what? And then it goes back to bass, you know. And I think this track is really cool, because the build-up is really slow. It's getting stronger and stronger, and then the main part is like super crazy, and then it drops down back, and then it's like really groovy again. I really love that track.
Nice. Well, I'll have to go look that up, and you go look that up too, DJ Sessions fans. And asking on the same line of favorite tracks, who's your favorite DJ, and can you tell us why?
Wow, that's super difficult, because I always I never had the feeling like when I go somewhere, because I know how it works, because the artist stands for something, and he has to play the music that he stands for. But I always like people that play like different sounds. And now I have to say, some DJ that I actually never heard playing, but I know that that he's playing the way I would really like it. And it's a shame, because I really want to go to one of his sets, and it's Laurent Garnier, because he plays like deep house, and then he plays like drum and bass, and then he plays like hip hop, and then he plays like a dub track or whatever. And he gets a lot of shit for it, because people come there because he has like some techno hits or whatever, and they expect him to play like this. But he's like really like doing his thing, and then drops it down, goes to drum and bass, goes back to techno, goes back to house, plays a soulful house track and stuff like this. That's at least what I heard. So if this would be definitely a DJ that I want to hear. I want to be surprised by a DJ, you know. It was seldom that I go to a DJ set where I'm like, wow, this music is great, and I don't know any track. You know, this happens like really seldom. But if it happens, and even it's a resident of a club or somebody that I don't know, then I'm really like, I'm getting like really into the groove, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome, and then I'm like shazamming it under my hand and stuff like this. This is like, these are the DJs that I really like.
Yeah, one of the things I found after night clubbing for about 30 years of my life, going out, is that I like to now get out of my environment, get out of my local scene, and go to other cities and nightclub there where I basically don't know anyone. And I'm going in, and the experience that all I get to focus on, I mean, maybe it might be the aesthetics of the environment of the club, but really, you have to watch the performer. If you want to have a good time, you're there to watch the artist, and you can now focus 100% on that. And you're not talking to 50 people. You're not being distracted. You're there with an intent and purpose of the music and only the music. Last year, for my birthday, I went to the Brooklyn Mirage. I don't know if you've ever heard of that club or played that club before. It's in New York. Beautiful club, beautiful venue. And it kind of just changed my whole perspective of saying, okay, if travel permitted this year, I will be going to more countries, to bigger clubs, and getting out there, and having that experience, because then I can become, I don't want to say just a number in the crowd, but I'm just there, and it's me and my bubble focusing on what's going on, which is the music, without anything. I think it's a very invigorating experience. And so, if I went to that show, to that DJ you just mentioned, to go see him play, I'd probably be like, this is awesome. This is amazing. I wouldn't know what to expect, because I'd walk in and be like, this is wow. Whereas if somebody was doing that in my hometown, 30 times a year, I might walk in, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stand over here by the bar. He's just playing the same thing. So I like
the problem is also that the possibility to become a DJ right now is very, very easy for everybody. And nobody needs to travel somewhere to buy cool vinyls or whatever. You just download everything. And this is now obviously for some years. But this made a lot of people get into a specific style, and they stick in one style because it's easier to do marketing for it, and to create your brand. You have your name, you play one style, and that's it. But that was never something for me that I was interested in as a DJ. What I mentioned before is like, there's so many good music out there, and there's so many styles and all kinds of stuff. If you have the right crowd and you can play whatever you want, that's like the most fulfilling feeling that you can have. Like, if they follow you from, I used to play in Belgium, and Belgium has like a really good radio, public radio stations. They play all kinds of music, like Prodigy, then Britney Spears, then the Neptunes, then Nerd, and then, all this kind of stuff. On a daily basis, so they have a lot of musical knowledge, and then you can go there and you can play just different styles, and you see that the crowd is just coming along, with the stuff that you're coming up in the moment. That's like the most amazing feeling for a DJ. It's like everybody can go and play 50 hits. I can teach my mom here, 50 hits, play them, and everybody will be like, oh, my mom's a great DJ. What? This is not what DJing is about. Like, of course, everybody can know well-known songs. That's really, really easy. But if you can play for people that expect something different, and then you play the tracks in the right moment, and you feel this energy come together, that's like the most amazing thing.
Absolutely. That leads right into my next question perfectly. If you were to play a party where only 20 people showed up would you finish your set and make it a hell of a party? Or would you consider it not a success?
Well, I would never start. If I would be like, oh, let's shut down, it's nobody coming, everybody goes. No, I stay until the end, man. I make party with the 20 people. That's it. We get out some Jaeger bombs or whatever, and then rock the party.
There you go. Speaking of which, what is your drink of choice before you go on stage?
Well, I used to drink. I used to drink Jägermeister and beer. Then I got into gin tonics, but then you can't drink too much gin tonics because they're so strong. It depends on what mood I am in. But usually I drink 1-2 Jägermeisters and a couple of Red Bull or whatever if I'm tired, and then that's enough to get in the mood.
Yeah, I definitely understand the caffeine kick there. And if you could host your own event without any limitations, name 5 things you would want to have at that event.
Well, I always thought about, because I did my own party like 2013 and the years after here in Cologne, a big party with big DJs. But what I always wanted to do, and that was funny because you said this with virtual reality and this kind of things, was like to set up a dance floor with multiple speakers surrounding the dance floor, and then somehow it would be cool to separate the sounds of the tracks and have them have like a joystick or something like this where you can just move the sounds around to people. You know what I mean? Like this. Of course, it's like 5.1 or even Atmos out Dolby Atmos or something like this. Something around this idea. And if you go a little bit more further, and that was what I was thinking that you were talking about, was like this immersive event. Obviously you're talking about digital enhancement of the experience, but if you could have the sound experience connected with the light experience, but not like a stage where everybody has to look in front, but it's around you, you know what I mean? And then you would have also like the possibility of having smells, for example, like all of a sudden smells like you're in the woods or whatever. I was always interested in something like this, like to create like really like an experience that's not like a party, but you're in some other world. You know what I mean? And then I always obviously I liked always performers, but not like go-go dancers, but performers that really tell a story, that have like, for example, crazy costumes or whatever. And we had a party there also in the same location called Looneyland, which started the whole thing. Now it's like the arrow parties, something like this. This kind of style we had also, but the arrow party is more like a carnival, I think, more like confetti and some people wearing costumes, stuff like this. But if you have this kind of things, you have your sound, you have the lights, you have smell, and then you have like participants, like actors or performances that you're like in the middle and you're like, what the hell is going on, something like this. This will be a really, really cool party, I think.
Well, I think that's like, if you mention like dancers or go-go dancers or stage performers, I think what you'll be able to see also is you'll have these stage performers where they'll be on site, but they might have devices on them that they're wearing, and they might be costume on stage, but when you put the AR glasses on, you'll see an overlay of costume go on them, and you might even be able to change the experience of the costumes that they're wearing. But no matter what, those costumes are going to be mapped to them as they're dancing or as they're moving on the stage. So if you want to see aliens, you can see aliens. If you want to see furries, you can see furries. If you want to, whatever it is, and you can see that superimposed over top of the experience, and you could create that experience, or you can just make it one universal experience as well. I think that the things that are going to happen with AR and like you said, Atmos and these things coming out, obviously it always starts out really expensive in the beginning. Somebody first does it like a well, here in the States it'd be Insomniac or Live Nation or one of the big tours, David Guetta or somebody at Coachella or somewhere, does it. And then everyone else starts going, how do we do this at a smaller scale level? And just always being on top of that technology is it's always changing. It's always moving forward. It's always awesome. But going back just a little bit to your DJ career, because I got a couple other questions I want to ask you, is when it comes to PR and marketing, what measures do you take to actively promote yourself, your releases, and your career? And do you think solid PR management is an important asset for DJs to have?
Of course it is. That's one of the most difficult things to do, because you make the music, but how do you get it to the people? And the way is constantly changing. And I think it's more difficult now because more people produce music, and it's just a huge pile of music that comes out every day. And how do the people find the music, And what I experienced over the years, like when the internet started, I was like convinced that this is a great opportunity. Now everybody's gonna listen to only the coolest music, and it's like a more or less like a revolution, and all this radio barriers and stuff like this, they will break down. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. Radio is still super important, and advertising, all stuff can make a hit, or this kind of like voice TV shows or whatever. This is a different evolution that happened. But I think super difficult, and there's a lot of companies that provide this, and obviously they cannot guarantee you that what you pay them for is going to happen, because in the end it's always about the music. And it can also be that some kid in a bedroom made a track and put it on SoundCloud, and then thousands of people shared it and it became hit. But it can also be that you, as an established artist, put out a track and the PR sends to every radio, to every newspaper or whatever, and they all say like, yeah, it's nice, but we're not going to feature it or whatever, So it's really, you can spend a lot of money on this, and then you have to see what is it worth, you know what I mean? It's like I did last year, I did an album, and I paid a PR company also a lot of money to get it around, and obviously they made reports and they said this and that, but in the end I was like, okay, but if I've spent just the 10 grand on Facebook advertising or whatever, probably would get a much more exposure out of it. Now I know that the people in some radios didn't like the music, but what does that help me? You know what I mean? So how do you get to the consumer directly? That's the big question. And that's the question, if you need really an agency or if you can do it yourself on a different, it's not, if you're not talking like whatever, Ariana Grande worldwide release of a single or whatever, this is obviously another game. But I mean, for techno and house DJs, I don't know if you really would need like a huge PR company, because they cannot guarantee you that music's gonna be heard or successful, So maybe you should just start, if I would give somebody a tip, just start small, pay $50 or whatever for a small DJ promotion, and then see what these people say. If there's a lot of positive feedback, maybe invest more. But it's very difficult because there's so much noise for everybody, and everybody's just this track, and then 6 weeks later they will never play it again. So I would be really careful spending a lot of money on this kind of things.
And that's what I've been telling people over the course of the last few years, is that this business can be very expensive. The entertainment industry is I was once told 20 years ago by a good friend of mine, right before I did my first celebrity interview with Paul Oakenfold. I was interviewing him on the couch, and I said, hey, is there any Cinderella stories in the business? And he goes, no, Darren. Everyone that starts out and they get big, it takes them years and years and years. Excuse me. And that was before live streaming had really come out. All we had was really broadcast television. YouTube had just come out at that point. So from a video producer wanting to distribute, we were locked to television or public access, and you had to pay to buy your time slots to get on television. And then you had to find sponsors, obviously, to recoup your money back based upon the viewerships that you had. And if your show cost you literally on paper $50,000 to $100,000 to produce, but the only time slot you could get into warranted $2,000 in sponsorships, you're severely underwater. But you're playing to get those network credentials, so then you can pitch them to a studio and say, hey, pick up our show, and then cut us a check as the executive producer company. And I've always known that it's been, I don't want to call it a rich kid's game, but you're going to have to put, and I get it that time behind the decks, time researching tracks, time making the music is all great, but PR, you can't be everything. And I've had a number of people over the years also say, when I took the PR out, or when I was trying to make a label and I had somebody else do the PR, I had somebody else do the label, and I could go back to focusing on what I do best, is making the music, I catapulted and went way further than I could ever come trying to manage it all and do it all myself. And now you got to.
That's a very important point, that to focus on something that you can do best. That's the thing, and I mean, if you're talking about video production, and of course YouTube came out, and if you watch some tutorials of filmmakers or directors or whatever, nowadays whatever Martin Scorsese would say, like, oh yeah, okay, you can now make a movie on your cell phone and then you put it on YouTube and stuff like this. Yeah, you can do that, but there's 10,000 people that do this every day. That's not the point. Of course you can do it, but how do you get through the noise? That's the funny thing. And I think still people don't know exactly how. Like, it's the same thing, like somebody pretends to know how to make a hit. Nobody knows, you know what I mean? They know, like, of course you can try this and you can try that, and you can copy a little bit of what is at the moment, what is hip and stuff like this, but nobody knows. And that's the same thing with, for some people it's going to happen, for some people not. And there's a little bit of luck involved. That's the truth. Everything with art, it has a little bit of luck, that two people can do the same thing, and one has a little bit more luck, and he lifts off and he can live his life as a musician, and the other one starts a regular job and just dreams of being an artist. It's just the reality.
Absolutely. It's the drive, the passion, all that have to be there. Networking skills, reaching out. I was talking with somebody the other day and said, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. And, if that person just took one more shot than you did, you could take 99 shots and they took that 100 shot. That 100 shot could be the one. Or maybe you stopped at 99 and they stopped at 500, but they did 401 more shots than you did. Not only are they going to be more trained and more seasoned and understand they put up with more of the process than the person who stops, but you got to just keep pushing it and going. I mean, geez, I've been doing this show for 12 years now, and took us a few years to finally get recognized by Twitch, which we're happy with that relationship, to make us a featured partner. And you got to look at all the hurdles to become a featured partner. It wasn't easy. They just don't onboard everyone. And, it isn't just, hey, I got a cell phone, I got a live streaming channel, we'll make you a featured partner. We had to put in a lot of work, a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and free time, I might add, to make things happen. And but now where we're at.
The thing is with art is that if you have to have a real passion for it, and you want to devote your whole life for it. If you're just looking for fame and money and girls and party or whatever, it will wear you out over the time, because you will always hit some borders. You will always get to some naysayers. You will always have disappointments and stuff like this. And only the people that are really, really passionate for what they are doing, they will go through it. And that's it. I mean, how many people I know that were DJs when I was, 10 years ago, they are not DJs anymore. They're not artists anymore. They're having regular jobs, family and house and wife, and I'm still doing it. But I didn't choose, like, I was not like, oh, what job could I do? Oh, DJ, it sounds to be a really good thing. No, it was like, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be involved in music. And this was just one part of entertaining people. You travel alone, you have less cost than with a band or whatever. And this was just, a development. But in the basic core was always the passion for music. I didn't care if I do this or that, if I play there with the guitar or if I play there with turntables. For me, it's the same thing. It's just, being involved in music and stuff like this. And this is something, if you ask also, what is success for an artist, or what are you ever going to achieve success with what you're doing? I think living this life is already success enough. Okay, cool, if you make some more money or you have more fame, this is an add-on. But if you can have a living everything that you love and that you have a passion for, I mean, how amazing is that? That's already a super success for me, at least.
I was in a development class when I was going to college for my second degree a couple of years ago, and two things I wanted to bring up. One, touching base on the YouTube mention that you made earlier about 10,000 people uploading videos on YouTube. In 2016, it's actually, YouTube was pinged at getting 1 million videos a minute uploaded to YouTube. Yeah. And I just wanted to touch base on that one. But going forward, same year, I was taking a self-development class, and the teacher, it was a case like kind of assess your own strengths, weaknesses kind of thing, prepare you for the job market class. And one of the things she did in the class was she showed this video of this guy. I can't remember his name, but the story is he lives on Venice Beach, and all he does all day long is just roller skate up and down Venice Beach. And he did this for years, and everyone kind of knows this guy. Well, this one guy stopped him one day and said, "Hey, what's your backstory? I mean, you can't just be roller skating full time for a job. And the guy said, oh, I used to be a major real estate investor. I made millions and millions and millions of dollars in real estate, all this stuff. And then one day I just didn't like it anymore. It was just bogging. It just wasn't self-fulfilling. And it just quit everything, dropped everything, said, I put on a pair of roller skates and just started up and down the beach. And it was a verified story they did with this guy. And, the guy just wanted to go out and do what he wanted to do and be passionate about that and follow. Yeah, we probably had millions of dollars in the bank behind him. But that being said, I immediately when the film finished, I raised my hand in the class for feedback on the film. And I said, I used to work for corporate America, jobs, making good money, very prominent rise of career up that food chain. And I'd rather be making $30,000 a year doing what I love than making $250,000 a year not loving what I do and making that such an integral part of my life that I only get this amount of time to have fun, and I'm not really having fun at my job, Yeah. And eventually that 30 grand could maybe turn, like I say, you do it long enough. You put 10,000 hours in, you become a master, of what you do. And you just keep on honing your skills. And then you can eventually start charging for your skills. And maybe that value goes up and up and up a little bit more. And you can start making a comfortable living doing what you love doing. But yeah, that's the difficult thing is a lot of artists, they don't have that support to fall back on because they're working a day job and then trying to do their hobby, hoping that their hobby does this when their day job's consuming so much of their time, along with sleep and other things. But speaking of job paths, careers, things that you do, I want to touch a little bit on your acting career. And tell us a little bit about that and how you got started in that.
Well, I actually studied film in 2013 in Los Angeles for a couple of months. And I actually wanted to live in the States also and work there and, become a director or actor or filmmaker in general. And because I was married with a Brazilian, we couldn't get any like long-term visas because whatever, the Americans and the Brazilians always have a little bit of trouble with each other. So I skipped that again. I lived in Brazil, then moved to Brazil, opened a bar and restaurant there. And then I came back 2019 to Germany, and and then the pandemic hit, and then I was like, okay, so what am I going to do now? And then I was like, okay, well, you learned this, and you could still do it, and now you're a little bit older, and let's see if there are roles out there or whatever, And then I contacted some agencies and went on some websites where they offer jobs and stuff like this, and all of a sudden I got booked, and I was like, all right, that's cool. So that's the way I got back into the business, like really, just looking for something else to make money besides music, because everything was shut down and then open and then shut down again, and after 2 years, all the savings are gone and you need to make some, you have to have some alternative income. Yeah, and that's how it started. And now for me at the moment, it's like really became like it's funny to say because acting is not a stable job, it's like you have to do castings all the time, like you don't get jobs automatically, but somehow it worked out. So I'm this is like now really my second business. Now I'm doing all kinds of things like advertising, films, and I did some great stuff where I played like Nazis and policemen and firemen and Roman soldiers and stuff like this. And this for me is like heaven. That's like, because I always like to entertain people and I like to play in what kind of ways, and then amazing. That was really cool. If Corona would never happen, I probably would never go back to acting. So for me, it's really cool. Another way of express myself.
And I was looking at one of your reels and I was wondering, I just briefly saw it. I was kind of scanning through. Was that you in that black and white film standing on the edge of the rooftop?
Yeah, that's me.
Did they pay you extra money for being a stunt double as well in case something happened? Was there a net down below you or a bag you could fall on, or were there?
No, it was actually actually on the rooftop of the building where I built the studio that I told you last year.
Okay.
And it just looks like it's really high up, but it's actually just going down 2 meters, and there's another platform. So we just put the camera exactly like it looked like, it's like really high up. Yeah, and then I was like, okay, to make it more dramatic, I was just gonna stand up, and then it looks like it's really going like down 40 meters or something like this. And
it totally did, and I was like, I don't see any wires here. I'm wondering, like, is there somebody
really fun
like what happens if like a gust of wind happens and oh wait. Hey, I've done some stupid stuff on the sides of buildings before, but we won't get into that. Now, here's a question: if Hollywood were to make a movie about your life, who would you pick as the main actor?
To play me?
To play you, yes.
What do you mean, like younger me or like older me? Or?
Let's say it's your mid-years.
Yeah. Okay.
After you entered the industry, but not the take away the first 5 years, 6 years, forget about the last 6 years, and you in the middle, who would that be? If they had a range to play a younger self and your older self, who would you put in that?
Well, I mean, this guy, I always forget his last name, Timothy, that was just playing in the Dune. Also, had also a small role in Don't Look Up. What's his last name? I don't know. The guy with the jawline, Timothy so-and-so. He's pretty cool. And he's now, I heard that they are making a movie where he's like Willy Wonka before Willy Wonka became Willy Wonka. I'm really curious to see that movie. That's
Timothy Chalamet.
Exactly. I think this guy would be cool to play. Let's say the part of my career that started like from 2003 to 2013 would be good.
Okay, that sounds interesting. I could see this. I'm looking at it right now, and you're right. It's the name of the film is called Wonka, scheduled for release in 2023. Wow, and I'm a huge Willy Wonka. Got to show you something right now. I am a huge Willy Wonka fan. My mom got this book for me.
Cool.
For Christmas. You can see it. There you go.
I could see it, yeah.
The actual paperback of this book. I had this book as a kid, one of my favorite books growing up. I love the Gene Wilder version. Tim Burton version was pretty cool. It follows the book a little bit more. But I mean, after watching the original Gene Wilder version so many times as a child growing up, I'm a huge fan of it, but I would definitely, I'm just looking this now. Wow, there's a clip for it. I'm going to have to check this out after the interview. Good. I am a huge Willy Wonka.
I heard it's a musical book, so I don't know if it's going to be really, cool, but the idea is, it's funny to see how or what he was before he became, because he's kind of like a mysterious man. Like you don't know where he's coming from or what he did before or whatever. But the idea to have like a prequel of what's of the movie.
Yeah. The story will focus specifically on young Willy Wonka and how he met the Oompa Loompas on one of his earliest adventures, which actually that is in the book, by the way.
Yeah.
He talks about how he met the Oompa Loompas and it went down to their village.
Does it say who's going to direct it?
Paul King.
Okay. I don't know.
Who is notably known for, gosh, the internet's a wonderful place. Paul King, let's see, the Mighty Boo. Oh, he did the Mighty Boosh. So I don't notice too many. Do you know the show, The Mighty Boosh?
No.
I think that's the one with the crazy dreadlock fish guy.
Well, crazy dreadlock fish guy sounds cool.
No, it's not the Mighty Boosh. I can't remember the name of the one, but it's a crazy ass show. And if I find it, I'll email you. I'll email it to you. I'll get the name of it. But I don't notice too much of what this guy is, what the director's done. But that's okay. Probably still be a good story. Yeah. So, other than that, I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Is there anything else you want to let our DJ Sessions fans know about before we let you get to maybe bed over there? I don't know what your late nights are like, but
no, I'm going to play in a bar now. So it's 9:10. I'm putting on my clothes, and then I go there to at least. And now all the clubs are closed here, so you can't play in a club. So I have these friends; they have a small bar, so at least I'm getting to play some music. Yeah, I want to release. I have an album ready, but I didn't, quite get to the end of it. And then I talk to people, and they ask me, "Oh, why are you doing an album?" But for me, it's like it's a different. I could release tracks all the time, which is great, which I will probably also do this year. But because we talked a lot about albums and how they were influencing our childhood or teenage years or whatever, and I really love that tradition of having possibility to have like 12 tracks and have really like a complete package, you know what I mean? Not like 12 singles or whatever, which it's a little bit of an old school approach, but I'm old school, so whatever. Yeah, and so I will release this album this year, I guess. And yeah, I just started to record my radio show again. I did a 2-year break because I don't know, I was just not inspired and through all this drama and all these things. So but now I'm kind of like, yeah, it's fun again to do a 1-hour radio show. We'll release it every Friday on mixcloud.com /Tocacabana. And yeah, so these are the 2 projects, and I hope I just had some cool projects coming in as an actor also. So I really, really hope that not only for me, but for everybody, it's going to be a great year, and we can get over this thing that influenced our life in the last 2 years so much, and be free again.
Absolutely. I'm logging in. I just followed you on Mixcloud.
Cool.
A curious question. Are you going to be doing any live stream videos? Do you do live streaming, or is this like, is the show like, basically Mixcloud has their live platform that they launched not too long ago. And we are privy to be a featured partner with them as well. And so love that platform. And it's definitely one of the platforms that I think is going to emerge here in the next soon. I'm going to say in the next soon. I don't know when, because of what happened.
It's a plan. It's a plan that I'm having, probably not every show, but maybe once a month or something like this. And during the first lockdown, I did a lot of shows where I played also synthesizers and drum machines and live instruments with it. If I would do something like this, then I would be really like a concert, like a live thing. Because I don't think it's interesting to watch somebody press buttons for 1 hour, So I would.
You mean 2,200 episodes and 12 years of doing a DJ show, and you don't find it interesting? Unfollow.
Watch somebody do this, But if somebody plays an instrument, or he's twisting some knobs, or using a drum computer on top of it, or something like this, then I would watch it,
Yeah, absolutely. Or some aesthetics, some aesthetics in the background. I mean, I can't knock it.
I wanted to say if I have big tits, but that was pretty, like, really, I didn't say that. Okay?
I won't go on the record what they're officially called. It isn't bad, but there is an official term for it.
I saw, because a friend of mine, Anna Reusch, she's a techno DJ from Germany, and she recorded a live stream a couple of weeks ago, and she was dancing and stuff like that, and had like a little bit of a see-through t-shirt, and that was all the guys probably, or whatever, who was watching it were chatting about. And I mean, of course, she's a nice looking girl or a woman or whatever, but I mean, that's not what it's about. It's about the music. So it should have been about the music that she was playing. And she did a really good comment on her Instagram, addressing the topic and stuff like this, which I thought really cool. I don't want to be a woman in this business. I think it's really fucking hard already as a man, but as a woman, you have like so much more things that you have to take care of and control while you're playing and stuff like this. But yeah, she handled it pretty good, and let's see.
Awesome. Yeah, it is, seeing the rise of the online streaming happening in 2020. We were just getting ready to go back to the front page of Twitch, and getting everything with licensing set up and all this great stuff. And then boom, March hit. And I tell people my phone, I probably fielded within the first month and a half, over 150 inquiries, calls, people that I've known for years, people I don't even know. They're like, Darren, you're the live streaming guy. What do I do? What cameras do I get? How do I do this? How do I get around copyright? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like,
good for you.
You know, I had to put on kind of a block on it. You know, I'm saying, hey, you know, here's an article. Go read this. Everything I know, I found online for free. Go find it.
You should have charged them.
You know, and you aren't paying me a consulting fee for this, but I took a step back for about 8 months and worked on a lot of brand development and licensing deals and all that stuff to make sure we were ready and locked in to move forward. Because everyone jumped online, they expected this. Oh, this is awesome, and then they get minimal viewership because they had no following. They had no precursor. So bless everyone's hearts. I love the fact that because now that happened, I can go out and say to somebody, hey, we're a Twitch featured partner, or hey, we're a live streaming DJ show. And the two questions I used to get all the time were, what's Twitch? And I'd be like, okay, well, compare YouTube. Google owns YouTube. Amazon runs Twitch. Oh, okay. It's a multi-billion-dollar. Okay. Yeah. Number two, who would want to watch a DJ online? And I said, do you ever listen to a radio show? Do you ever listen to music on your phone? Do you ever listen to You're basically listening to an audio track right there. This is just another distribution medium. Plus we get to have video content with it and put it in different locations and do crazy stuff. And like, oh, now everyone's like, oh, a DJ show. Oh, wow, you're a featured partner on Twitch. Ah! And I'm like, yes, I was trying to tell you this for 10 years. Like I said, always 10 years ahead of the game. So again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. We'll follow up with you here later in the year. Where can people find out more information about you and what you got going on?
Well, you can always go to www.tocadisco.com, which leads you to all the pages like SoundCloud Tocadisco, Twitter Tocadisco, Instagram The Real Tocadisco, and Facebook Tocadisco. So if you type in Tocadisco, you will find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roman, for coming on the show. It was a pleasure. Once again, this is
nice talking to you.
You're welcome. Thank you for watching the DJ Sessions presents the virtual sessions with yours truly, Darren Bruce and Roman, aka Tocadisco. Don't forget to go to our website, thedjsessions.com. Find us on Facebook, hashtag us, Instagram us, @mention. It's all the DJ Sessions. And you know what happens on the DJ Sessions? The music never stops.